In 1935, one of the most accurate pirate films, Captain Blood, was created. Though about pirates, the story is really centered on slavery, which is now called human trafficking. Unlike the usual comic veneer slavery is usually given, this movie shows the cruel and torturous treatment of people for what it really is: abominable. However, most people are still far too ignorant and complacent about this issue. We need to ask, what is trafficking? And are we going to continue to wallow in our conformity and comfort, or take a stand to help our fellow man? Captain Blood is the story of an intelligent gentleman doctor named Peter Blood, who is sold into slavery in Port Royal. He and his friends escape to become pirates, until he buys his former owner, the lovely Arabella Bishop, as a slave. Eventually, the captain and crew are pardoned, and the couple get married, happy that they are all finally free. There are two categories of slave in this classic film, just like there are two main forms of trafficking: forced labor and sex trafficking. Blood and his crew make up the first, as they are forced to work in plantations and push water wheels. Similar to labor trafficking today, where victims are beaten and tortured into hard labor, or even breaking the law under threat of death, or in some cases the assault and murder of their entire family. Arabella represents the second category, as she is sold with the intention of being used for sexual exploitation, the same as thousands of women, children, and even men today. Doreen Marie Marchionni believes the solution is informing the masses through media, especially the news. Most people in the West are only familiar with sex trafficking. She mirrors this with a study that showed trafficking coverage for the Washington Post, New York Times, London Guardian, and London Times. Only one paper had over 20 articles in a year, even discussing this issue. 50% was on sex. 25% was nonspecific, which left only 25% of coverage on all other forms, including labor, brides, domestic servitude, and babies. Alison Cross builds from Marchionni, but instead of informing everyone, Cross focuses on educating our law enforcement. She wants to prevent dual victimization, which is where a victim is attacked by the legal system as a criminal, while being harmed by an owner as well. It is very hard to tell the criminal from the victim, because most trafficked people are too afraid to trust the police. Cross's solution is three-pronged. 1. Mandated human trafficking training for all law enforcement officers. 2. Including human trafficking as an affirmative defense to crimes committed due to the trafficking situation. And 3. Allowing vacation of prior convictions on a showing of human trafficking. This means police must be trained to spot trafficked individuals. A person cannot be convicted for crimes done while enslaved, and if previously convicted while a victim, a person's record will be cleared. Samuel Vincent Jones would disagree with these ladies' opinion, that all trafficked individuals are victims. Jones explains that though there are extremes, the line that differentiates trafficked victims with illegal immigrants is so thin that it is impossible to define. He lists 5 categories that separate these two extremes, which are standard human trafficking, standard migrant smuggling, fraudulently induced smuggled migrants and human trafficking victims, consenting debtors, and consenting participants. In other words, leave well enough alone. Anything else will just cause problems. He also points out that some victims do not want help. It may be true that there are some who will reject help, but there are still thousands of people crying out, hoping someone will care. Jones considers this point of view imposing on the victims' rights, and the people who believe in making a change do so to patronize, disregard, and act in sharp contrast to respect. His argument is too condescending and extreme to be considered valid. Marchionni and Cross, on the other hand, acknowledge that this issue is multifaceted and will take money and time to change. But the fight for freedom is well worth the cost. If citizens can be informed, they can push for the funding needed to improve law enforcement and policy to help the victims of trafficking. Even a movie has the ability to shed light on the darkness of trafficking, but it can only go so far. If knowledge ends there, people will simply think how unfortunate slavery is for a few moments and then get back to their life. We as humans must become more aware of the reality of human trafficking, increase the awareness of those around us, and persuade the powers that be to make a change or replace them with those who will.
Created using Powtoon.